We will be in Matthew chapter 5 this morning. I spent the last week at church camp. Got a fist pump. Like a sixth grader. Church camp's interesting because, as I told the Bible class this morning, it's amazing how they work 10 full days into 6 days of camp. It is the longest week. But it's great. It's fantastic. It's worth every bit of energy you put into it. And you put a lot of energy into it. One of the things that you run into a church camp, especially with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, that you'll say, hey, quit throwing water on her. Is often what I said. Quit throwing water on that girl. But I don't care what you were, I don't care. Just do. I really don't care about your excuse. Just do the thing I ask you to do. Well, the reason I was throwing water on her, the boys often, they'll say, I wasn't throwing water on her. And you, oh yeah, can't tell you're lying. I actually told a kid, I said, you know your voice just skyrockets when you're lying, right? He said, what? So, but see, they have their excuses. We all do in a way. We all have those bits of us that say, I would be who I wish I could be if it weren't for fill in the blank. I would be the type of person that I wish I could be if it wasn't for this or that. There's just some things, my time restraints or my financial restraints or this one particular habit that I've got that I just can't quit. I would be the sort of person I wish I could be if I just died. And that's our excuse. Now, it might be a really good excuse. You might have some serious financial troubles. You might have some serious health troubles. You may have some serious time restraints, and we understand that. But let's just admit for a second that the thing that's keeping us from being who we've been called to be is simply an excuse. It's something that God said, do this, and we say, well, I would do that if she would not. Oftentimes, we wait on the people around us to be the sort of person they need to be before we're willing to be the sort of people we're willing to be. 2 weeks ago, we talked about being a peacemaker. And that's really hard to do. Because the way Jesus talks about being a peacemaker is you need to act toward peace. Well, I would, but man, you don't know who I'm dealing with. I don't care who you're dealing with. Act toward peace. A lot of times, our response to a message that convicts is a response of an excuse. You, Benjamin, you just don't know. You don't know how difficult it is to get those kids up. One time I was getting my hair cut. I've way too many stories where I'm getting my hair cut talking to the lady. And she said, my boy just got internet in his room, and man, it's like, it's hard to get him out of there now. I said, do you realize, I don't know why I said this while someone was having scissors 2 inches from my head. I said, do you realize putting unprotected internet in your child's room is basically like going down to a magazine stand, like we have those, and grabbing a Newsweek, grabbing Sports Illustrated, Easy to Spin the magazine, Men's Health, grabbing a Teen Weekly, and then about 90 pornographic magazines and just throwing them in the room and saying, here, you decide. And she said, well, you'll see when you have kids how hard they just nag you and nag you until they get it. And I came home and told Rachel that conversation. She said, be the parent! You're the parent! You make the rules in your house. Your kid doesn't make the rules in your house. have no idea what it's like. Okay, yes, I'm sure I don't. But I do know the problem that is inherent in giving your kids something that's just going to probably wreck their whole life. Every time we are challenged, we often meet those challenges with excuses. And let me tell you, if God calls us to do something, your excuse is worth swat. Your excuse is just worth nothing. Like, I get, he gets you, he understands you, but if he calls you to be a peacemaker, if he calls you to help the poor, if he calls you to give financially to things that are worth giving your money to, if he calls you to those sorts of things, your excuses really aren't worth anything at all. That's why I love at the end of the Beatitudes and at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, he pretty much just wipes out all excuses. Listen to what he says. Matthew chapter 5, we'll start in verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the people who, when they do the thing that God has called them to do, blessed are those who suffer because of it. Blessed are you when what God has called you to do is difficult and you do it anyway. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Look how difficult the thing, just the three prior Beatitudes. Let's go to verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. I believe we have a slide on this if they want to read along. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Listen, having mercy on people who don't deserve it, which that's what mercy is. You don't show mercy to someone unless they deserve it. They don't deserve it. Otherwise, it would just be called justice. Having mercy on people who don't deserve it is so hard. Having mercy on people who don't deserve it. Being pure in heart. Not having like this defiled side of you. I would argue that this calls us to not only be, to have clean thoughts, but to rid ourselves of cynicism and sarcasm. Be pure in heart. Do you oftentimes think the worst about someone? That's not a pure heart. The real of your heart actually hopes for the worst about somebody, because then it's juicy. And we can talk about it at the salon. The salon, did I say that right? So there is... We are called to do difficult things. Peacemakers. Later in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, listen, if you go to worship, if you go to praise God, and then you realize not that you have something against somebody else, but that somebody else has something against you, you go fix it. Typically, in that situation, our tendency is to say, well, if they got something against me, that ain't my problem. Jesus says it is. Jesus says, if someone has something against you, you drop your sacrifice. You stop your worship and go fix it. It is more important to God for you to have healthy, good relationships than it is for you to be singing songs in church. Stop church to heal church, he says. All those things taken together. And then, if you move forward to the Sermon on the Mount, where he talks about anger and turning the other cheek, and all the way you're supposed to love other people, and the way you're supposed to forgive other people, and not judge other people, it stacks one thing on the next, where we're just not that great at it. We're just not that good at it. And yet God says to do it anyway. And the reason we're not that great at it is because if we do those things, it's going to get us in trouble. if we show mercy to people who don't deserve mercy, the people who don't think they deserve mercy are going to be mad at us. If we're pure in heart and refuse to gossip about anybody, it's going to land us into some tough situations where we have to say, I'm not going to talk negatively about anybody. The bad words in our house are the words that are detrimental to other human beings. Yes, slang words, my children can't say them. They don't know them. But the bad words are the words like dumb and stupid and ugly. Those are the worst words I could think of because they rot your heart. God has called us to a life that is just a higher standard than the world around us. And the world around us interacts with us while we live out that life. They will not like us very much. Forget like the world. You know, preachers often talk about the world, which means kind of like there's some like line drawn in the sand and there's some heathens out there and then the Christians in here. And that's, I mean, we are the world. And here we're the broken. But we're the broken who have determined that we are going to bring our brokenness to the foot of the cross and rejoice at an empty tomb because our brokenness has been healed by the blood of the Lamb. We're still broken. We're still called to live a holy life in a broken world. Us broken people. And almost as if God says, it's almost as if God, Jesus here says, listen, I know that this is hard. So I'm going to throw this one in here that's going to just completely destroy. Let's go back to verse 10. Next slide. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You have just completely kept me from my opt-out. I could say, yeah, I would do that, God, but I'd be persecuted. People aren't going to be happy with me. People are going to think we're the wrong kind of church. Jesus says, well, then you are blessed. He goes on to say, blessed are, my page turned, blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. God says, you be merciful, you be pure, and you seek peace rather than judgment. And he later says, don't judge other people. That's not up to you. And if you do these things, you will be persecuted. I have said before many times from this pulpit, we've only been here 10 months, but I've said it many times. Seems like 10 months, right? That's crazy. It's been 10 months. It feels exactly like 10 months. No one ever says that. It always feels less or more. It feels. But there is, if you walk in these doors, we love you. Say, Benjamin, but I'm an alcoholic. We love you. Benjamin, I've been divorced several times. We love you. Right where you sit. And I'm going to need to, well, we love you. We believe that the love of God and the love of church changes lives. We do not believe that the judgment of God and the judgment of church changes lives. But it is the love that is extended by God through Jesus and then by His church to the world around us that causes the world to say they've got something that we don't have and that we want. But the church has been painted as a hateful organization. We have the reputation reputation, not necessarily this particular church, but just churches all over the world have the reputation of being a hateful group of people. We have that reputation because we earned that reputation. Because for a long time, and probably even at moments still, we are a hateful group of people. We take the people who aren't like us, who don't wrestle with the sins we wrestle with, and we vilify them and say, well, they're the sorts of people we're not, and we really preach against well, when I was growing up, you preached against drinking, and smoking, and rocking, and rolling, and well, that was one. And then you preached against all the things that were just so horrible, but we could angrily preach against them. With malice and hate in our hearts, we could preach against them. We preached against people who worshiped differently than we do. We preached against people who prayed differently than we do. We preached against people who confessed their sins in different ways than we did. And everything, it looked as though our gold standard was the person we shave in front of. But our gold standard is one. And you know when you do that? When you're the only standard you have, you don't get a lick of persecution. Either people join you or they don't. But they just flat out don't pay you any mind if they don't join you. But if we start saying openly, as we have before, you've been divorced, you are addicted to drugs, you are addicted to alcohol, you're addicted to anything, addicted to pornography, you're addicted to if you have an eating disorder, if you're struggling with same-gender attraction, whatever it is, we love you as soon as you come in the door. Do you or do you not believe we are going to catch some heat for that? Well, bring it on. Bring on the persecution. Because we will not refuse to look like Jesus because. We'll not refuse to look like Jesus because some other person wants us to look like them. We just won't. I'm tired of living by a standard that didn't die on the cross for me. I'm tired of living by a standard that didn't get up out of the tomb for me. Our standard should be the one who redeemed us, who set us free from death, the one who loves us right where we sit. Benjamin, they had different political beliefs than me. Even all the better. That song we sang, Love One Another, The Greatest Command is what it is, what it's called. It's neat. Those of you who are visiting with us, and this may be your first peek into a cappella music, we love it because there's moments like this where we have 4 different parts, and at times 5 or 6 different parts, people singing different lines. And in those different lines, we find unity and harmony and beauty. And sometimes we mess up. Sometimes we sing the wrong note. But one of the great things about harmony is that it's not everybody singing the same line, but it's a bunch of people singing different lines. But because they're different, they're beautiful. Your sin is different than my sin, and my sin may be different than your sin, or we may have the same types of sins, and we have them for different reasons. Our lives, while they look different, can blend together to make church. And if I believe with all of my heart, because I think Jesus teaches this here, that if we look like Jesus, we will be persecuted like Jesus. And people will look at us and they will wonder, why do they eat with sinners? Why do they love the people who aren't good enough? You say, bring that on. So your life, in your life, as a church, we're not going to use that excuse. We're just not. But in your life, you may be using an excuse to say, it would be way too hard for me to live the life I need to live. It would take me having to say some things out loud that I've never wanted to say out loud. Well, is that excuse good enough? Listen, I want to close by reminding you that I'm not saying that you have to rid yourself of all excuses, all sins, all problems, all of your brokenness to get God. I'm not saying that. We would all be in trouble if that were the case, right? We can all agree on that. If I had to be perfect to be God, then what's the point of Jesus being perfect to get me to God? But I am saying that if you can't overcome the excuses that are keeping you from living the life Jesus has called you to live, then you're not doing a great job of letting His kingdom come. You're not doing a great job of letting His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So your excuses might not send you to hell, but it might keep your neighbor from heaven. See where I'm getting? Like your life might not be kingdom come. And your excuse is just not worth it. It's the best life. A life that is persecuted. I once had a man tell me, you imagine how many people we could convert if we could just do miracles like Jesus did? And I said, do you realize that Jesus was tortured and killed, right? You realize that didn't get him 3-year ministry, the tops. That's what you got. If you really could do miracles like that, it never landed anyone in a luxury condo. It always landed them in prison. So be careful what you wish for is all I'm getting at. So we are called to a certain lifestyle, but the lifestyle is not one of bounty. It's not one of recognition. It's one that is going to cause us trouble at times. And I think the thing that will get us in the most trouble is learning to forgive and learning to love, learning to show mercy, learning to be pure, and learning to seek peace like Jesus sought peace and showed love and was pure and showed mercy. That's going to get us exalted. Man, it is worth the trouble. The question you got to ask yourself is it worth the trouble to you? I feel like this church represents itself well as a group, but as just you personally, is it worth the trouble to you? And if it is, then you got to think, what are the next steps I need to take to get myself in trouble? And then start walking. Because the world, to be honest, a lot of churches would be very frustrated with Jesus. If you could do miracles, chances are Christians would tie you up. It's worth it. It's worth living a life, a persecuted life, Jesus says, just remember, they did it to me. He'll later say, they've done it to me, they'll do it to you. Blessed are you when you suffer more than I have suffered, he says. And they've done it to the prophets before me. So why not run with it? Why not be really good? Loving people so much, at making so much peace, at being so pure. Why not be really good at those things that it gets you in trouble? I believe it's worth it. I believe it's worth the difficult arguments, not the difficult arguments, the difficult conversations. It's worth the strange interactions. It might be worth people saying false things about you. Because you love those who sin, just like Jesus loves you. If you're willing to ditch your excuses, there's two ways you can do that. You can walk out these doors and just ditch them. But if you need a little extra help, then we're by all means willing to talk with you, pray with you. If you want to unite yourself to Jesus in baptism, then I want to come forward for that one too. Maybe it's been an excuse that you don't want to give your life to Jesus because you're not quite who you need to be yet. That's why you need to give your life to Jesus. Jesus makes you who you need to be. He doesn't take you who you become who you need to be. So if that's been your excuse, then come on forward. Come on down. Or go sideways. Grab your neighbor. Tell them you want to pray. Grab your neighbor and say, I want to give my life to Jesus. You don't have to come see the high and holy Benjamin. I've been invited to put that on the bulletin, but you don't have to just come see me. You can come see anybody. I believe that you can go to anybody in this church and they'll point you to the cross. They'll point you to the empty tomb. And then we'll see how much trouble we can get in. Let's stand.